Okay. Today we're talking about all of the worst books of 2020. It's actually the worst books that I've read. Me personally, not someone else. And they're not necessarily the books that came out in 2020. Actually, there's no books that came out in 2020. There's a lot of the books that I DNF'd as well, because this year I realized reading should be fun. And if I'm not enjoying books, then it's a DNF. There's one book that I have here that I'm still not sure. It's one of the books, you know, that a lot of people say get better as you go along the book, as you go along the series, because it's a series, etc, etc. It's very popular. So the first book on my list will kind of be the tentative, the DNF that I'm not sure about still. So if you've read that book, tell me in the comments why you think I should finish it and why I should continue with the series maybe. I still have it here, I still have the bookmark in, but for now it's gonna be on the worst because it really disappointed me. But okay, I'm already starting with the list, I guess. So yes, I have 10 books that I've read this year, and then I think are just horrible. I honestly think 9 out of these 10 books are horrible to me personally. I don't mean like in general sense. So I want to start with the list, and the first book that I have on my list, which again is a very popular book, and I do still maybe think of finishing it and going on to the second book in the series. I'm just like looking for a soul that will change my mind. You could be that soul. And that book is The Stormfront by who is it? Jim Butcher, right. This book has been highly anticipated on my list of books that I want to read, because it's an urban adult fantasy that's been going around the reading circles, and everyone who loves fantasy loves this series and these books. The reason why I didn't love them, I do recognize that this is the first of these authors, the first book, so the prose is really base level, if not below the base level. I really didn't like the prose. I did not feel the humor of the narrator. I thought the whole premise was kind of seen before and nothing new. And the premise is that this main guy, he's like a warlock in the city, and a crime happens and everyone thinks he did it basically. So he's trying to find out who actually did it, so he doesn't end up in prison for something he didn't do. And the crime, of course, is supernatural, so the police employed him because he's a warlock and everyone knows he's like the supernatural guy who has supernatural things going on. Anyway, the magic was nothing new. It wasn't really going in depth as much as I would like to. This made no sense. The magics the guy did in the book were more like, you know, that lazy type of magic system where anything is possible. There's no rules. This is another thing I didn't like. The magic system didn't work for me. The narrator, I didn't get his humor. I didn't like it. The prose was not up to my level or what I usually read. However, I do know that these books in the series, Dresden, right, the Dresden Files, right? These books are very popular. Jim Butcher comes up with a new book and it gets awards and stuff like that, and I want to be like included. I want to read. So yeah, I need to know whether this magic system gets better and whether this Harry guy, I think his name is Harry, does he get more deep, I guess is what I say. Anyway, I DNF'd this at page 100. I'm still keeping the book though, because maybe I will revisit it someday. Next book that we have is another popular book. It's not fantasy, it's not science fiction, it's just fiction. Dystopian fiction, you could say. This book is the book that everyone loves. Literally, the people that I follow, they could be reading fantasy, they could be reading science fiction, they could be reading memoirs, for all I care. For all I care, I do follow them, and they all gave this book like 4 or 5 stars. I'm talking about Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Love the name, by the way. The book, not so much. I just thought it was boring. This is why I DNF'd it at like 60-70%. I could have read it, I could have finished it, I was nearing the end, but it drained me so much. First of all, because it's about an epidemic that wiped out the whole human race. By the way, we're living in an epidemic and I can't deal with these types of topics right now. The other thing was the beginning was so interesting, like the first chapter, wow, I was sold. After the first few chapters, everything goes downhill. Nothing is happening in this book, like, it's just boring. I can't even say I hate the book because I don't. I just can't form any emotion about it. It does not make me feel anything. Total, utter indifference. This is why I DNF'd it, and I'm not probably ever gonna revisit this book, ever. I do like nice prose, this has it. I do like literary fiction. I really enjoy everything this book is supposed to be and is. However, it just does not work for me for some unutterable reason. Next one is a middle grade classic, kind of, and I wanted to read it just because of the reason, this specific reason that it is a classic. It also has a Netflix TV show, fairly new, and I don't know, the idea of this book really attracted me, and this is a first in a series of like 11 or 12 or maybe even 13 books. And yes, it is The Bad Beginnings by Lemony Snicket. When I see quotes from this book online, I love them. I don't typically reach for middle grade, I don't like middle grade. However, because so many quotes online and excerpts from this book got me interested in it, I was thinking like I'd give it a chance. I have to accept that middle grade is not my genre, because this book, I was bored. I think this book was the same as the Station 11. I only got to like 70%. I mean, it's a big chunk of the book, although it's not long. And then I just DNF'd it. I couldn't even finish it. The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket was so hopeless to me. When I was reading it, I could not like grab for any part of the book that would promise some type of brighter future. I don't know, I need this in my books, I guess. I like dark books, but I like if they have some kind of promise of something nicer coming. This one did not have that, and it was middle grade, and the writing that I thought would be beautiful is kind of like just normal writing, and it's nothing special, and yeah, I DNF'd it. I was not intrigued by it. The next book is another DNF. It's another contemporary young adult, which is a genre I realized I'm not into it as much as I was. I'm talking about Everybody Sees the Ants. Everybody Sees the Ant. One ant in particular. No, Everybody Sees the Ants by A.S. King. Yeah, so this is contemporary young adult about this boy. His parents are really not there for him at all, and he's pretty lonely and depressed, and we're inside his head, and he constantly has these dreams of his grandfather in Vietnam. Like, he's there, he's trying to save his grandfather. I don't like Vietnam stories from the perspective of the American. I don't know why. So this is the first thing why I guess I didn't really connect with the story. Second, this boy and his emotions and thinking is so basic. It's not special. The writing is, again, below what I expect from a young adult contemporary or any book in general. Nothing particularly interesting about this book, honestly. I DNF'd this book like halfway, I would say. I don't know. I expected this to be like Adam Silvera. I expected this to be on a much higher level than it was. It had some positive reviews, which I shouldn't trust. I mean, when looking for books, you should definitely look at negative reviews as well, to give you perspective. I learned this from this book. Okay, moving on. I forgot to mention, but my list is actually from least hated to most hated books. And now we're on number 5, somewhere in the middle. It's another book that I DNF'd. I realized that this year I DNF'd a lot of books because I didn't like them. And I'm really proud of myself, because before I could not DNF books. I always had this feeling like I had to finish a book. And this is another such example where somewhere halfway, I just DNF'd the book because I couldn't find anything I like about it. And it's another young adult, I guess, young adult contemporary. It is Suicide Watch by Kelly York. This book is another popular one that was kind of circling around the booktube circles, and I thought I'd get to it. I would kind of remove it from my TBR, that was my goal. As I said, this was on DNF. I DNF'd it halfway because I think it talks about this group, this online group. Young people who want to commit suicide join this group and then kind of converse, blah blah. Anyway, I think this book definitely romanticized suicide, first of all, romanticized depression. When you write this type of love story that revolves around mental illness, it's always a very hard thing to do, which this book didn't do, unfortunately. Besides that, again, prose is the biggest problem in the books I read. Prose is just so bad. It is, well, I don't want to say bad, but it's just not good. It's not good. Despite me saying like that it romanticizes illness and stuff, I do admit that I did like some of the other books before that also kind of can be said to romanticize illness. So it's not like I'm a perfect human being. I'm just saying this book in this time that I've read it was not doing it for me. The next one is the book that I've read with other people, and it is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. With this one, the prose wasn't such a problem. It was just okay. Like, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. It was in the middle. For me, it was just that it was boring. The world is not really set up, the world building is really minimal, which unacceptable for me, unacceptable. The main character is just a basic character, the basic girl. She doesn't have anything that I would cling to, that I would relate to, that I would like about her, or dislike for that matter. The two love interests, one is the prince, one is the assassin, we don't know which is which. They're like, you know, trying to find her, and one is trying to kill her, the other, I don't know what he's trying to do. Anyway, one is black-haired, the other is blonde, and it's like, you know, black and blonde. Which shall she choose? The premise sounded really fascinating to me. I really liked it, and I wanted to read this book for this reason. However, it was bland. It didn't play on its mystery. It's more played on the drama of the world, on the drama of the main character, how she escaped her kingdom not to marry this prince, right? That this is why he's searching for her. She's working as a bartender, and these two guys are swarming around her. So your typical love triangle / fantasy young adult book. I was just bored by it. This is why I DNF'd it, and move on. The next one is a really popular book, another young adult fantasy. This year I've definitely realized that young adult fantasy genre is not for me. I still reach for Maggie Stiefvater young adult books and Alice Oseman, etc, etc. However, young adult fantasy books are just not working for me anymore. And this one I actually finished. It's a pretty popular book, and it's a pretty old book, and you'll probably be, oh, of course she didn't like this book. No one likes this book nowadays, except the ones that have like read it while they were young people, like in middle school and stuff. And I'm talking about Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. The book I listened to on audiobook actually, because I couldn't read it physically. I just didn't feel like it. So that begs the question, why did I even like listen to it if I didn't want to read it? I don't know. I was living a different life back then, okay? It was like months ago. Anyway, this book, fun fact, the last hour or two or four, I don't know, as I was listening to this book, I was returning from my friend's house, and I was in Japan back then, and the town was still of course unknown to me, and I got lost, and I was wandering around for like 3 hours. I didn't have my phone working, like I couldn't look at Google Maps. I didn't have anything, only my feet, and I was walking for like 3 or 4 hours. And the rain started, of course the rain started, of course it would. This day really feels like a fever dream to me, even now still. And this is how I remember this book. It was a nice walk, it was an enjoyable kind of listen at the moment, but now that when I think about this book, it is so bad. And I won't say anything revolutionary. The main problem with this was prose again, and everyone is kind of complaining about the prose in this book, right? Because it's so flowery. It is definitely the worst type of purple prose you can find in anything. Also, like, the main character was very whiny. I suppose I would be also whiny if I were 15. I guess that's realistic, but for me right now it's just I can't relate to those types of characters. The world is minimally built. The world building is like it doesn't exist. It's a dystopian one, actually, not a fantasy. I said fantasy before. It's a more of a dystopian book, but still the world building is not there. The two love interests, again, love triangle here. The two love interests, one I could not stand, the other one, the bad guy, was okay, fine, let's see what's happening here. The only viable way our main character would fall in love with this bad guy is if he turned good. This is why I don't like young adult fantasies, dystopians, all that much, because we don't have true morally grey characters or true villains that can still have love interest, can still be followed around, although they are just bad, just plain evil. I really wish to see more plain evil characters that aren't turned good just because they are gaining a higher position in the hierarchy of the characters, if that makes sense. The main reason why I didn't like this book was because of its prose and the plot and everything, literally everything. I didn't like this book for everything that it had to offer. The next one is the eighth book on the list, and it is a really bad one. I don't even... it's a young adult contemporary, another genre that I realized I don't like this year. I don't know what to say about this book because it's just... I really hated it. Like, I really hated it. It's the upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli, and she wrote also Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which I liked this book. I gave it 3 stars the first time around, and then I reread it because of the movie and I gave it 4 stars, so you could say that I really enjoyed that book. However, everything that I've read since from Becky Albertalli was just not up to that level. She creates these cartoonish characters, caricatures actually, not real people, and I'm not interested in those types of books. I'm not interested in characters that seem like they're impossible. This is impossible. How, I don't know, annoying they were. We also had this sister relationship in the book that was just so not well done. It was just ignored, right? There was like this period where they didn't talk for like weeks, if not months, because of some girl. Like in this in this book, the sister of the main character got a girlfriend, but it's basically the same, like girlfriend, boyfriend. To let this person, this outsider, to come between your sister, between the sisters. Okay, it's possible, but I think in this book it was really superficially done, and I didn't enjoy another moment of this book, and that begs the question, why have I finished it? As I said, I was in a different mindset at the beginning. I read this at the beginning of the year. I was really forcing myself to finish every book that I DNF'd and every book that I disliked for some reason. Of course I don't do this anymore, thankfully, but this is why this book, The Upside of Unrequited, is on the 8th place, 3rd from the worst book that I read this year, because I just forced myself to finish it. Next one is a graphic novel that I read in one evening, and then I just had to wash out my eyes and brain after reading this book. It's made... I mean, I decided to read it because this popular TV show also came out, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna read the graphic novels and then I'm gonna watch the TV show and we'll all have a good time. We had the worst of times, okay? It was the worst of times, Charles Dickens. The book, the graphic novel I'm talking about, is The Boys by Garth Ennis. The Boys. You've probably heard about the graphic novel, you probably maybe read it or watched the TV show. Wow, this is such a bad comic book. I'm not against nudity or graphic violence, like explicit things in books and graphic novels, but they really have to make sense. All of those like trigger warnings, they're in this novel, and it's not that long. The novel is not really long, but everything has been pushed into it, and everything happens to women, of course, to women. What is the story, by the way? It's about these guys who are going against superheroes because they're sick of superheroes. The premise of this sounds so enjoyable. I love superheroes, and I love this new take on superheroes, or at least I thought I would. Reading this first volume was just like, I was persevering. I finished it. I really wanted to enjoy it. I really wanted to find good things about it. I couldn't. There was every woman in this, not a lot of them. Every woman experienced some kind of sexualization or rape, and it was on the pages. It was like, this is a graphic novel, right? No. The last book. The book that I hated so much. Like, I'm actively hating it still since seeing the Goodreads Choice Awards. How could have this book been chosen as the best fantasy book? I'm still crying inside. Yes, I'm talking about Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Jesus freaking Christ. First of all, how can this be adult fantasy? It is so... the prose is so fanfiction-y. I don't want to be like rude or anything, it's my personal opinion, but this book is just so bad. The plot is bad, the characters are bland and bad, the whole, like, it's an 800-page book, and I'm making no sense right now. There's a lot of things that I want to say about this book. Let's start with the plot. It's a 800-page convoluted mystery that could have been sold in like 3 pages. Honestly, the main characters, our main characters, girl, boy, fall in love or like have this sexual attraction, whatever. He's like some kind of angel slash slave or demon, I don't know. She's half fae, half human, imagine that. And they're not the smartest bunch. But it's not just that. I dislike the writing style, I dislike the prose, I dislike how Sarah J. Maas' voice comes out of the pages and is forcing me to think a certain way about certain characters and certain situations. I just wish that she would let me choose how I feel. I heard someone else review Sarah J. Maas in a similar fashion, where they said that she doesn't let her readers make up their own mind, which I completely and utterly agree with this. Besides that, I just don't like how events are described. I don't like how the characters are described. Like, she's really having this vision of a character, and she will put that vision across in such a forceful way. It's like you can't imagine your character in any different way than what Sarah J. Maas imagined them to be. The type of characters that you would meet in a typical young adult fantasy book, you have all of them in one place. This is why I can't believe this is titled as adult fantasy, because the writing is not adult. The book, the plot itself is so childish in a way. So yeah, wow, I'm really trashing this book, and I will continue to trash this book until I find a new book to trash. Next video that I will make is the top 2020 books that I read, the like best books of 2020, so be on the lookout for that video. And that is it. So subscribe to my channel and go read a book. Bye!